Oh, how wonderfully ironic life can be. There I was, Kira Voss, floating in my medical pod like some sort of decorative ornament, watching the humans scurry about their ship with their peculiar two-armed efficiency. You'd think after losing both my limbs in that delightful little skirmish with the Void Hunters, I'd have bigger concerns than observing the curious habits of these bipedal creatures. But no, here I was, finding their constant arm swinging absolutely fascinating. Honey, how quaint. Westall. Windamachten. The human ship, designated as the U.S. Resilience, had picked up my distress beacon 3 rotations ago. Not that I was counting or anything. Well, actually, I was counting. When you're stuck in a medical bay with nothing but your thoughts and the occasional visit from Dr. Marcus Webb, time tends to crawl by like a wounded space slug. Good morning, Kira, Webb said, entering with that insufferably cheerful human expression they call a smile. How are we feeling today? Oh, absolutely magnificent, I replied, my voice dripping with enough sarcasm to corrode hull plating. Nothing quite like waking up to the gentle reminder that I'm about as useful as a broken hyperdrive. But please, do tell me more about how wonderful everything is. Webb chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both annoying and oddly comforting. Humans and their bizarre emotional responses. Your sense of humor is intact, I see. That's actually a very good sign for your psychological recovery. Psychological recovery. I raised what would have been an eyebrow if my species had them. Doctor, I'm a Zeltharian combat engineer. I've built weapons that could level small moons, and now I can't even scratch my own nose. Assuming I had a nose to scratch, which I don't, but you get the point. The good doctor made some notes on his tablet, probably documenting my latest bout of what humans call attitude. Fair enough. If I were in his position, I'd probably be documenting my patient's mental state too. Especially when said patient had a tendency to make jokes about planetary destruction. Actually, Kira, I have some news that might interest you. Webb pulled up a chair, which was unnecessary since I wasn't going anywhere. Captain Torres has been in contact with our prosthetics division. Prosthetics? I felt something flutter in my chest cavity. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe it was just gas. Hard to tell when you're floating in medical gel. You mean those artificial limbs you humans are so fond of? Not just any prosthetics, Webb said, his eyes lighting up with what I was beginning to recognize as human excitement. Our chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vega, has been working on something special. Something that might be compatible with your physiology. I tried to process this information without appearing too eager. After all, I had a reputation to maintain. Let me guess. You're going to strap some primitive human appendages to my shoulders and call it a day. How delightfully crude. Actually, a new voice interrupted from the doorway. I prefer to think of it as elegantly functional. I turned my head to see a human female entering the medical bay. She was tall, with short brown hair and hands that looked like they'd seen their share of honest work. More importantly, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. In my experience, that was either very good or very bad. Sometimes both. Well, Lieutenant Commander Vega, I presume? I said, giving her my most charming smile, which, considering my species' dental arrangement, probably looked more threatening than welcoming. Come to examine the broken toy? Come to meet a fellow engineer, she corrected, pulling up another chair. Dr. Webb has told me about your background. Combat engineering for the Zeltharian fleet? That's impressive work. Was impressive work, I corrected. Now I'm just an impressive conversation piece. Vega laughed, a genuine sound that caught me off guard. You know, when I first lost my leg in the Titan mining accident, I said almost the exact same thing. I blinked. You lost your leg? Right below the knee, she said, tapping what I now realized was an artificial limb. Best thing that ever happened to me, actually. Gave me a whole new perspective on human engineering, and a very personal motivation to make better prosthetics. Oh, wonderful, I said, though I found myself genuinely curious. So you're telling me that losing a limb was somehow beneficial? How delightfully human of you to find the silver lining in dismemberment. Not beneficial, Vega corrected, but educational. It taught me that the human body is just another machine, and machines can be upgraded. She stood and walked to the medical bay's main display, calling up a holographic projection that made my remaining functional organs skip a beat. The image showed a pair of arms, but not just any arms. These were works of art, combining sleek metal frameworks with synthetic muscle fibers and neural interfaces that looked more advanced than anything I'd seen in Zeltharian military tech. Holy void, I whispered, momentarily forgetting my sarcastic facade. Those are gorgeous, aren't they? Vega said, rotating the projection so I could see every angle. A titanium carbon composite framework, synthetic neural pathways, haptic feedback systems, and processing power that would make a ship's computer jealous. Oh, and they're purple. Purple? I asked, confused. Well, the synthetic skin can be any color you want, but I figured purple might complement your natural pigmentation nicely. I stared at the projection, trying to process what I was seeing. The arms were beautiful, yes, but more than that, they were functional. Really functional. The joint articulation alone was better than my original limbs, and the neural interface technology was leagues ahead of anything my people had developed. This is some kind of joke, isn't it? I said, though my voice lacked its usual bite. You're going to tell me that these miraculous appendages cost more than a battle cruiser, or that they're incompatible with my species, or that there's some other delightful catch. Actually, Dr. Webb interjected, there is a catch. And of course there was. I should have known. Nothing good ever came without strings attached, especially when humans were involved. Let me guess, you want me to become some sort of test subject for your experimental technology? A walking advertisement for human engineering prowess? We want you to help us build them, Vega said simply. I felt my jaw drop. Literally, my lower mandible actually separated from my upper one, which was embarrassing but also unavoidable given the circumstances. You want me to what now? Help us build them, Vega repeated. The neural interface technology is the tricky part. We've got the mechanical engineering down, but interfacing with non-human neural pathways, that's going to require someone who understands both human and Zeltharian biotechnology. And you think I'm qualified for this? I asked, still trying to process the implications. Kira, Webb said gently, you're probably the most qualified person in known space for this job. Your background in combat engineering, your understanding of both human and Zeltharian technology, and your personal investment in the outcome? We'd be crazy not to ask for your help. I floated there in my medical pod, staring at the holographic arms, trying to figure out if this was real or some sort of elaborate hallucination brought on by too much medical gel. The humans were asking me to help build my own prosthetics. Not just asking, but genuinely believing I could contribute something valuable to the project. You realize, I said slowly, that I'm currently about as useful as a decorative plant? I can't even hold a wrench, let alone operate complex machinery. That's what the preliminary work is for, Vega said, waving her hand dismissively. We'll start with the neural mapping and interface design. All of that can be done through voice commands and direct neural input. By the time we're ready for the physical assembly, you'll have your new arms. And if something goes wrong? I asked, because I had to. My people were naturally suspicious, and recent events had only reinforced that tendency. What if these miraculous appendages reject my physiology? What if they don't work? What if they work too well and I accidentally crush something important? Then we'll fix it, Vega said with such matter-of-fact confidence that I almost believed her. That's what engineers do, Kira. We find problems and we solve them. Sometimes we create new problems in the process, but that just gives us more things to fix. Plus, Webb added with a grin, it's not like you have anywhere else to be right now. I glared at him, though it was more reflexive than genuine anger. Your bedside manner needs work, Doctor. So I've been told. I turned my attention back to the holographic arms, studying every detail. The more I looked, the more impressed I became. These weren't just replacements for my lost limbs, they were improvements. Significant improvements. The strength ratings alone were twice what my original arms had been capable of, and the precision controls were fine enough for delicate electronics work. How long? I asked quietly. How long what? Vega asked. How long before I can start working on this project? Really working, not just consulting from a medical pod. The basic neural interface mapping will take about 2 weeks, Webb said, consulting his tablet. After that, we can begin the preliminary attachment procedures. If everything goes well, you could be testing prototype functionality within a month. A month. I repeated the time frame, trying to wrap my head around it. 4 weeks from now, I could have arms again. Real, functional arms that might actually be better than what I'd lost. And you're absolutely certain that you want my help with this? Absolutely, Vega said. In fact, I'd say it's essential. We can build the hardware, but we need someone who understands the unique challenges of integrating human technology with Zeltharian physiology. Besides, Webb added, who better to test the user interface than the user? I couldn't argue with that logic, and honestly I was starting to feel something I hadn't experienced since waking up in this medical bay, excitement. Real, genuine excitement about a project that could not only restore my capabilities but potentially exceed them. All right, I said, trying to sound casual despite the fact that my hearts were racing. I'll help you build these arms. But I have some conditions. Name them, Vega said immediately. First, I want full access to all the technical specifications. If I'm going to help design these things, I need to understand every component, every system, every potential failure point. And done. Second, I want to be involved in every stage of the process. Not just the neural interface work, but the mechanical assembly, the testing, the calibration, everything. Absolutely. Oh. Third, I paused, wondering if I was pushing my luck. I want to make some modifications to the design. Vega's eyebrows rose. What kind of modifications? Well, I said, allowing myself a small smile, if we're going to build the most advanced prosthetic arms in known space, shouldn't they have a few extra features? Maybe some integrated tools? Emergency power systems? Perhaps a small fabrication unit? You want to turn your arms into a portable workshop? Webb asked, sounding somewhere between impressed and horrified. I want to turn my arms into the most useful appendages in the galaxy, I corrected. After all, if you're going to give me artificial limbs, why not make them artificially superior? Vega was quiet for a long moment, and I wondered if I'd gone too far. Then she smiled, and I realized that I'd just found a kindred spirit. You know what? She said. I like the way you think. Let's build something amazing. And just like that, I found myself looking forward to the future for the first time since the attack. Oh, the irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a Zeltharian warrior who'd spent her career building weapons of war, about to collaborate with humans on a project that could revolutionize prosthetic technology. If my old unit could see me now, they'd probably think I'd lost my mind along with my arms. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe it was time to build something that helped instead of harmed. Maybe it was time to see what these curious humans could teach me about turning loss into opportunity. When do we start? I asked. How about right now? Vega said, pulling out a portable scanner. We'll begin with a comprehensive neural mapping of your existing pathways. Fair warning, it might tickle a bit. Oh, wonderful, I said, settling back into my medical pod. Nothing I love more than having my brain tickled by alien technology. But despite my sarcastic commentary, I was grinning. For the first time in weeks, I had something to look forward to. Something to work toward. Something that might just prove that losing everything wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a much more interesting chapter. 3 weeks later, I was beginning to understand why humans had conquered half the galaxy. Their stubborn refusal to accept limitations was either inspiring or terrifying, depending on your perspective. Today, it was definitely inspiring. Neural pathway integration at 92%, announced Dr. Webb, monitoring the cascade of data flowing across his screens. That's actually better than we projected. That, of course it is, I muttered from my new workstation, a specially designed interface that responded to my thoughts and voice commands. Ziltharian neural architecture is far more adaptable than your initial scans suggested. I could have told you that if anyone had bothered to ask. We're asking now, Vega said, not looking up from the mechanical assembly she was fine-tuning. What else should we know about your people's nervous system? I paused my work on the haptic feedback algorithms to consider her question. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of discovery, collaboration, and occasional frustration. Working with humans was like trying to choreograph a dance with enthusiastic but unpredictable partners. They had brilliant ideas, terrible timing, and an annoying habit of succeeding despite their chaotic methods. Well, I said, our neural pathways are designed for redundancy. If one connection fails, 3 others can compensate. It's why we're so good at multitasking in combat situations. That explains why you've been running 17 different calculations simultaneously, Webb observed. I was wondering how you were managing to optimize the joint servos while redesigning the power distribution system and creating new grip patterns. 18 calculations, I corrected. I'm also working on a better cooling system for the processor cores. Your original design would have overheated within 6 hours of continuous use. Show off, Vega said, but she was smiling. Let me guess, you have a solution? I have 3 solutions, I replied smugly. But I'm leaning toward the one that involves microcirculation channels filled with thermally conductive gel. It's elegant, efficient, and virtually maintenance-free. Of course you do. Captain Torres entered the engineering bay, looking like she'd just finished a 12-hour shift, which, knowing her schedule, she probably had. How are we progressing, people? Ahead of schedule and under budget, Vega reported. Kira's modifications have improved the design by approximately 40% across all performance metrics. 43%, I corrected. But who's counting? Torres raised an eyebrow. And the integration process? Tomorrow, Webb said, his excitement barely contained. We're ready for the final attachment procedure. I felt my heart skip a beat. Tomorrow. After 3 weeks of planning, designing, testing, and refining, I would finally have arms again. Real, functional arms that could do things my original limbs never could. The anticipation was almost overwhelming. Nervous? Torres asked, apparently noticing my sudden silence. Terrified, I admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if my body rejects the prosthetics? What if the neural interface causes permanent damage? What if I can't control them properly? What if? What if? Kira, Vega interrupted gently, breathe. You've run every test, checked every calculation, and verified every connection. These arms are as much your creation as they are ours. Trust your own engineering. Easy for you to say, I muttered. You're not the one getting experimental technology grafted to your nervous system. Actually, Vega said, rolling up her sleeve to reveal an intricate network of neural interface ports along her forearm, I am. I've been beta testing the neural connection protocols for the past 2 weeks. I stared at the ports, each one a tiny miracle of engineering that allowed direct communication between biological and artificial systems. You've been testing the interfaces on yourself? Someone had to, she said with a shrug. Besides, I wanted to make sure the user experience was as smooth as possible. No point in giving you amazing hardware if the software is clunky. You magnificent, reckless human, I said, equal parts impressed and horrified. You could have suffered permanent neural damage. But I didn't, Vega pointed out. And now we know the system works perfectly. The connection is seamless, the response time is instantaneous, and the sensory feedback is remarkably realistic. How realistic? I asked, curiosity overcoming my anxiety. See for yourself, she said, activating one of the interface ports. Suddenly, her left arm transformed, synthetic skin retracting to reveal the mechanical marvel beneath. So servos whirred, actuators flexed, and sensors glowed with soft blue light. A full tactile sensation, temperature sensitivity, and pressure feedback. It's like having a biological arm, only better. She picked up a delicate electronic component, handling it with such precision that I could barely see her fingers move. Then, without warning, she crushed a steel bolt in her grip, the metal crumpling like paper. "Strength settings are fully adjustable," she said casually. "It's from delicate enough to handle butterfly wings to powerful enough to tear through battle armor. All controlled by thought and intention." "Show off," I said, but I was grinning. "When did you install the interface ports?" 2 days after we started the project, she admitted. "I wanted to understand what we were asking you to go through. Seemed only fair." I felt something warm and unfamiliar spreading through my chest. Gratitude, maybe? Or something deeper? These humans weren't just building me new arms. They were treating me as an equal, a colleague, a friend. When was the last time anyone had done that? "All right," I said, trying to sound casual despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "I'm convinced. Let's do this thing." Tomorrow morning, Webb confirmed. 800 hours, Surgical Bay 3. The procedure should take about 6 hours, followed by a recovery period of 12 to 18 hours. "And then?" I asked. "Then we find out if we've built the most advanced prosthetic arms in the galaxy," Torres said, "or the most expensive paperweights." "Oh, they'll work," I said with confidence I didn't entirely feel. "The question is whether I'll be able to use them without accidentally demolishing half the ship." "That's what the training protocols are for," Vega said. "We've designed a comprehensive learning program that will help you adapt to your new capabilities gradually." "How gradually?" I asked. "Well, you'll start with basic motor functions, grasping, lifting, simple manipulations. Then we'll move on to more complex tasks. Fine motor control, strength modulation, integrated tool usage." "And the special features?" I asked, trying not to sound too excited. "Oh, those are the fun part," Vega said with a wicked grin. "Integrated fabrication unit, emergency power systems, communication arrays, diagnostic scanners, and a few surprises we haven't told you about yet." "Surprises?" "You'll see," she said mysteriously. "Let's just say that when you're fully operational, you'll be the most capable engineer in known space." I spent the rest of the day running final diagnostics, reviewing surgical procedures, and trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong. The humans seemed confident, but they didn't understand Zeltharian physiology the way I did. They didn't know about the potential complications, the rejection risks, the neurological incompatibilities that could leave me worse off than before. But they also didn't know about the desperate hope that had been growing in my chest for 3 weeks. The possibility of not just regaining my abilities, but exceeding them. The chance to be whole again, to be useful again, to be myself again. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I floated in my medical pod, staring at the holographic projections of my soon-to-be arms, memorizing every detail. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow I would either become something greater than I'd ever been, or I would learn that some losses couldn't be replaced. Dawn came too quickly, and not quickly enough. As the medical team prepared for the procedure, I found myself surrounded by faces that had become familiar over the past 3 weeks. Webb, checking and rechecking his instruments. Torres, offering quiet words of encouragement. Vega, making final adjustments to the neural interface protocols. "Ready?" Webb asked as the anesthesia began to take effect. "As ready as anyone can be for voluntary dismemberment and reconstruction," I replied, my voice already beginning to slur. "That's the spirit," Vega said, squeezing my shoulder. "When you wake up, you're going to be amazing." The last thing I remembered was the soft hum of medical equipment and the gentle voices of people who had become more than colleagues. They had become something I hadn't expected to find among the stars, family. When I woke up, everything was different. Not just because I had arms again, though that was certainly noticeable. It was the way those arms felt, natural and integrated, like they had always been part of me. "How do you feel?" Webb asked, monitoring my vital signs. "Like I could rebuild this entire ship with my bare hands," I said, flexing my new fingers experimentally. The sensation was incredible. Every joint, every servo, every sensor responded to my thoughts as naturally as breathing. "Let's start with something simpler," Vega suggested, placing a small cube on the table beside my bed. Try picking that up. I reached out, marveling at the smooth motion of my new arm. My fingers closed around the cube, and I could feel its weight, its texture, its temperature. It was perfect. Now, Vega said, try this. She placed a raw egg next to the cube. I looked at her skeptically. Trust me, she said. I picked up the egg, applying just enough pressure to lift it without breaking it. The tactile feedback was so precise that I could feel the slight give of the shell, the liquid movement of the contents inside. Incredible, I whispered. That's not even the good part, Vega said with a grin. The computer, activate demonstration mode. Suddenly, my right arm transformed. Panels slid open, revealing tool arrays that would make a master craftsman weep with envy. Precision manipulators, micro-welders, diagnostic scanners, fabrication units, and things I didn't even recognize yet. Holy void, I breathed. This is your new workshop, Vega finished. Fully integrated, voice-activated, and powerful enough to manufacture anything from microprocessors to structural components. I stared at my transformed arm, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just a prosthetic. This was a technological marvel that would revolutionize everything I thought I knew about engineering. There's more, Webb said, unable to contain his excitement. The neural interface includes a direct connection to the ship's database. You can access technical specifications, design templates, and fabrication protocols just by thinking about them. And the left arm? I asked, though I was almost afraid to know. Defensive systems, Torres said, entering the medical bay. Emergency shields, plasma cutters, and a few things that are still classified. You turned me into a walking weapons platform? We turned you into whatever you need to be, Vega corrected. Engineer, craftsman, warrior, protector. The choice is yours. I sat up slowly, testing the balance and coordination of my new limbs. Everything worked perfectly. Better than perfectly. The integration was so seamless that I could barely tell where biology ended and technology began. Why? I asked quietly. Why did you do this for me? Because that's what we do, Torres said simply. We see someone in need, and we help. We see a problem, and we solve it. We see potential, and we nurture it. Because you're one of us now, Webb added, part of the crew, part of the family. Because Vega said, the galaxy is a better place when amazing people have the tools they need to do amazing things. I looked around at these humans who had given me not just new arms but a new life, a new purpose, a new future filled with possibilities I couldn't have imagined. Thank you, I said, and for once my voice carried no sarcasm. Only gratitude, wonder, and the beginning of something that might have been love. Don't thank us yet, Vega said with a mischievous smile. Wait until you see what we expect you to build with those new arms. I laughed, a sound of pure joy that surprised everyone in the room, including myself. Oh, you have no idea what you've just unleashed. And as I flexed my new fingers, feeling the power and precision of my artificial limbs, I knew that this was just the beginning. The humans had given me more than arms. They had given me hope, purpose, and a chance to become something greater than I had ever been. The future was bright, and I had the tools to build it.